My blood ran cold the moment I saw him. The man who had shattered my life 7 years ago was standing right there, at my daughter's engagement party, laughing, charming everyone, wearing the same deceiving smile that once made me trust him when I was most broken. The champagne glass slipped from my hand, hitting the marble floor and exploding into tiny shards, echoing the sound of my breaking heart. Every head in the room turned, but I stood frozen, staring at the ghost of a nightmare I thought I'd escaped forever. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I'm Margaret Hartwell, but most people call me Maggie. At 65, I thought I'd learned to recognize predators, men who prey on vulnerable women. I was wrong. There he stood, in my daughter Sarah's elegant living room, surrounded by Chicago's elite, the man who once drained me of everything I had. Except now, he was wearing an expensive suit and a new name, Michael Sterling. Sarah rushed over, her dress-fitting appointment forgotten. "Mom, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." A ghost. That's exactly what he was. Michael Reynolds. The man who destroyed my life in 2018 was now my daughter's fiancé. Those same piercing blue eyes, that same charming smile, that same talent for deceiving hearts. He looked even more confident now, as if time had polished his lies. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I lied, forcing a shaky smile. But I wasn't fine. My mind was racing back to the day my world first collapsed. It was 2018. I had just lost my husband, Robert, a sudden heart attack. I was 58, drowning in grief. Then came Michael Reynolds, kind, attentive, just broken enough to make me feel needed again. He met me at a cafe near the Grief Counseling Center. For 10 months, he made me feel seen, loved, alive again. And then I discovered the truth. He wasn't after love. He was after them, a $75,000 from Robert's life insurance. He had been stealing from me the entire time. Now, 7 years later, he was back, standing beside my daughter, wearing a new identity. "Mom," Sarah said proudly, "this is Michael Sterling, my fiancé." He extended his hand, smiling warmly. "Mrs. Hartwell, I've heard so much about you." I forced myself to shake his hand even as my stomach turned. "How lovely," I said tightly. "And what do you do, Mr. Sterling?" "I'm an investment consultant," he replied smoothly. "I help people make smart financial choices." The irony almost made me laugh. Of course, he was still in the business of taking money, just legally now. As the night went on, I watched him work the room like a seasoned performer. He remembered everyone's names, made everyone feel special, genuine, like he cared. He was flawless. If I hadn't known who he really was, I might have fallen for it again. When the guests finally left, Sarah walked me to my car, glowing with happiness. "Isn't he amazing, Mom?" "I can't believe how lucky I am." "When's the wedding?" I asked weakly. "October 15th. I know it's soon, but when you know, right?" Less than a month away. My heart sank, because I already knew what he was after this time. Sarah's trust fund, which would mature when she turned 55, $2.5 million. That night I barely slept. By 2 a.m. I was on my laptop digging into Michael Sterling's past. What I found made my blood run cold. There was no record of a Michael Sterling before 2020. No photos, no history, no business data. For a man claiming to be a successful investor, that was impossible. Either he'd wiped his identity clean, or it was fake. By morning, I'd hired a private investigator, Patricia Newman. She specialized in background checks for families. When she called back the next day, her tone was grim. "Mrs. Hartwell, we need to talk in person." At a quiet diner on the edge of town, she spread papers and photos across the table. "Michael Sterling's record is spotless. Too spotless," she said. "Everything begins in 2020. Tax returns, business licenses, even his lease. It's as if he didn't exist before that." My heart was already pounding. "What about before 2020?" I asked. Patricia's eyes met mine. "That's where it gets interesting. There was a man named Michael Reynolds, vanished from Chicago in 2018, suspected in multiple romance fraud cases." My hand shook so badly my coffee spilled. "What kind of fraud?" "Targeting widows and divorcees," she said. "He'd comfort them, earn their trust, then drain their accounts, between $50,000 and $100,000 each." I closed my eyes. I'd been one of them. The money Robert left for my future, gone. Patricia leaned closer. "He reappeared in 2020 under a new name. I've tracked similar cases, Phoenix, Nashville, Denver. Always the same pattern, quick engagement. Then he disappears right before the wedding, with their money. The pattern was horrifying, and my daughter fit it perfectly. "What do I do?" I whispered. "If I tell Sarah, she'll think I'm jealous." "That's exactly what he's counting on," Patricia said. "He isolates his victims from family, makes them believe they're protecting their love." And he had already started. The last few months, Sarah had been distant. Cancelled dinners, short calls, always too busy. He was turning her against me. But Patricia was right. I was his one loose end. The woman who knew his real face. The next Sunday, Sarah invited me for dinner. Michael insisted on cooking. He made some elaborate Italian dish, charming and graceful as ever. "This is delicious," Sarah said dreamily. I smiled politely. I doubt I could recreate Michael's magic. I'm sure it needs very expensive ingredients. Michael's eyes glimmered with amusement. "Actually, it's all about patience. You have to build trust with your ingredients. Let them blend naturally." The double meaning wasn't lost on me. "So, Michael," I asked sweetly, "Sarah mentioned you're from the East Coast?" "Yes," he said smoothly. "Boston originally. Then LA, Phoenix, Nashville." My fork froze midair. Same cities Patricia had mentioned. "What brought you to Chicago?" I asked. He smiled. "Sometimes life brings you exactly where you need to be." After dinner, Sarah stepped away for a phone call, leaving me alone with him. He swirled his wine, his mask slipping slightly. "Sarah told me her trust fund matures next year." "She's very lucky." "Yes," I replied, voice cold. "And very trusting." "That's what I love about her," he said softly. "I'd hate for anyone to come between her and her happiness." A threat, disguised as affection. When Sarah returned, he flashed that perfect smile again. "Your mother and I had such a nice talk. I think we're really bonding." That night, I drove home shaking. He was going to destroy her, just like he'd destroyed me. The next morning, Sarah called. "Mom, we need to talk." When she arrived, her voice was cold. "Michael told me how you interrogated him last night." "What's wrong with you?" My heart broke. "I was just trying to know him better." "No, you were trying to find faults. He said you'd do this, that you'd try to tear us apart. It was working. He had turned her completely. Sarah, please, slow down. You barely know him." She shook her head. "You just can't stand to see me happy." Then came the final blow. "I think it's best if you don't come to the wedding." The world tilted. My daughter, my only child, was choosing him over me. When she left, I cried until there were no tears left. Then anger took over. I called Patricia. "He's planning something big," I said. "He wants me out of the way." "What do you want to do?" she asked. I looked at the photo of Robert and baby Sarah on the mantel. "I want to end this, for good." Patricia dug deeper. Within a week, she'd found everything. More victims, more names. Denver, 2023. Nashville, 2022. Phoenix, 2020. Always women between 28 and 35. Always gone before the wedding. "He uses new names every few years," Patricia said. "Marcus, Mitchell, Michael. Always the same initials. Always the same crime." I checked the calendar. October 15th, the wedding day. He always vanished 1 week before, which meant October 8th. That was 5 days away. 5 days to save my daughter. I stared at the clock, my reflection in the dark window. I wasn't that grieving widow anymore. He'd stolen my money once. But this time, he wasn't taking my daughter. This time, I was ready for war. The days that followed were a blur of dread and determination. Every morning, I woke with the same thought burning in my chest. I have 5 days to stop him. Patricia and I worked around the clock. She traced his bank accounts, business registrations, and phone numbers, each one leading to another fake identity. Every document, every signature, every trail he'd left behind was part of a web designed to vanish in an instant. But this time, he had underestimated his target. He thought I was still the grieving woman who had once believed every word he said. He didn't realize I had become something far stronger, a mother with nothing left to lose. On October 6th, Patricia called me. "I think I've found something," she said. "A woman in Denver, Rebecca Morrison. She lost everything after he disappeared last year. She's willing to talk." The next morning I flew to Denver. Rebecca met me in a small coffee shop, her eyes tired but sharp. When she saw Michael's photo, she went pale. "That's him." He said his name was Marcus Stone, claimed to be a venture capitalist. "We were supposed to get married in Aspen. He cleaned out my accounts the week before." Her voice trembled. "He always leaves a trace, not for the victims, but for himself. He likes to watch what happens after." I leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "He sends letters, anonymous ones, Tells you it was your fault for trusting him. Says you deserved it. That was the final piece I needed. He didn't just steal, he enjoyed the destruction. It made him feel powerful. I thanked Rebecca, promising her justice. When I returned home that night, I opened my old lockbox. Inside was the last thing Michael ever gave me. A silver cufflink engraved with the initials MR. The only real proof he'd ever existed before he became Michael Sterling. I ran my fingers over it, and an idea began to form. If he liked watching his victims break, I'd give him a show he couldn't resist. 2 days before the wedding, I reached out to him directly. I texted from an unknown number. We need to talk. Urgent. It's about Chicago. MH. Less than an hour later, he replied, "Who is this?" "You already know." He didn't respond again, but that night I saw a car parked across from my house. Black sedan. Windows tinted. Engine running. I smiled to myself. Got you. The next morning, I called Patricia. "I need a recording setup," I said. "Hidden mics, camera, everything." "Maggie, this is dangerous," she warned. "So is watching my daughter lose everything," I said. We spent all day preparing. By sunset, my living room looked perfectly normal, except for the 2 cameras hidden inside the bookshelf and lamp. At exactly 9:12 p.m., the doorbell rang. When I opened it, there he was, older, sharper, but still with that same wolfish charm. "Margaret," he said smoothly, stepping inside without waiting for permission. "Long time no see." I folded my arms. 7 years, actually. "You've aged well, Michael. Or should I say, Sterling?" He smiled faintly. "I wondered how long it would take you to find me." "You didn't make it easy." "I never do." He looked around, his tone casual. "So what do you want?" "I want you to leave Sarah alone," I said quietly. "Walk away before you ruin another life." He chuckled, low and dangerous. "You think this is about money again?" "I don't need Sarah's trust fund. I've moved past that." "Then why her?" I demanded. "You could have anyone." "Because she's yours," he said simply. "And taking her from you is worth more than any amount of money." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. He leaned closer. "You made me disappear once. Took everything from me, my contacts, my business, my future. I had to start from nothing because of your police report. You stole my life savings," I shot back. He smiled. "Fair trade, don't you think?" Behind my calm expression, my pulse thundered. The microphones were catching every word. "So what's the plan?" I asked. "Marry her, then vanish again?" He smirked. "No, Margaret. This time I'm not disappearing. You are." That was the moment I realized he was more dangerous than before. Not just a con man, a vengeful one. I kept my voice steady. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." He tilted his head. "You should be." Then, as quickly as he came, he left, his cologne lingering in the air like a curse. Patricia arrived minutes later, her eyes wide. "Did we get it?" I nodded. Every word. The next morning, I sent the full recording and Patricia's background file to Sarah's law firm under her name marked urgent. I knew she wouldn't read it immediately, but someone there would, someone who cared enough to check. That same evening, Sarah called. Her voice was tight. "Mom, what did you do?" "I did what any mother would do. Michael told me you're threatening him. He's furious. He said you tried to blackmail him." I took a deep breath. "Sarah, please listen to me. The man you're marrying isn't who he says he is. His real name is—" "Stop it!" she shouted. "You've gone too far." The line went dead. I sank onto the couch, trembling. The wedding was tomorrow. If she didn't believe me now, it might be too late. But then, late that night, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Sarah stood there, pale, shaking. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. "Mom," her voice cracked. "Tell me everything." We sat at the kitchen table until sunrise. I told her everything, how he stole from me, disappeared, and resurfaced under a new name. I showed her Patricia's files, the victims' photos, the recording. When it ended, she just sat there, silent, staring at her engagement ring. "I almost gave him access to my trust fund yesterday," she whispered. "He said he needed to move our money into a joint account for the honeymoon." Her voice broke. "I told him I'd do it after the wedding." I reached for her hand. "You still can stop this." She nodded slowly, wiping her tears. "I'm going to—" But she didn't tell me her plan. The next day, October 15th, dawned bright and cold. The venue was a grand hotel downtown, filled with flowers and laughter, and a groom who had no idea his empire was about to crumble. I waited outside in Patricia's car, every nerve buzzing. Inside, Sarah walked down the aisle in a white gown, her expression unreadable. When the officiant said, "If anyone has any reason why these two should not be married," Sarah raised her hand. The entire room gasped. "Actually," she said calmly, "I do." Michael blinked, confused. "Sarah, what?" She turned to the guests, her voice clear and steady. "Michael Sterling is not who he says he is. His real name is Michael Reynolds, and he's a con artist wanted in 3 states. Whispers filled the hall. A man in the crowd, Patricia's police contact, stepped forward. Badge flashing. "Mr. Sterling, you're under arrest." Michael froze. "You can't prove anything." Sarah pulled a small device from her bouquet, the voice recorder I'd given her. "Oh, I think we can." The room erupted in chaos. Cameras flashed. Michael tried to bolt, but 2 officers blocked the doors. As they cuffed him, he turned to glare at me through the glass doors at the back of the hall. Pure hatred in his eyes. "You'll regret this, Margaret," he snarled as they led him away. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel fear, only peace. Weeks later, Sarah and I sat together on the porch sipping tea. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, Mom, I should have believed you." I smiled softly. "You did when it mattered." Patricia called the next day. Michael had confessed to multiple counts of fraud and identity theft. Dozens of victims were finally getting justice. It didn't bring back what I'd lost, but it gave me something better. Closure. Sometimes when I look out at the maple tree Robert planted the year Sarah was born, I think about how close I came to losing her too. But love, real love, doesn't fade when tested. It fights back, and that's exactly what I did. He thought he'd found another victim. He forgot I'd already survived him once. This time I wasn't the widow he fooled. This time, I was the storm that ended him.